officials. I thought that would be interesting and fun.
There have been probably some instances.
And we'll begin with a moment of reflection and pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have roll call, please.
Rod,
Here.
Devanzer,
Here.
Ford,
Present.
Herring, President, Kratza,
Present.
Lancaster,
Here.
Noel, Smith,
Here.
Steelman,
Here. Taylor.
President, Warnock.
Here.
I know of one addition to the agenda. I don't know if others have any. Under no new business, we're going to discuss this thing that you have in front of you on the desk about no May. Is there anything else? Are there any other changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none. In your packet, you have minutes of the April council meeting. Do we have a
Move to approve.
second? Is there any discussion of those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion carries. Likewise, you have the minutes of the April work session. So motion to approve those.
Move to approve.
Theme going here. Is there any discussion of those minutes?
Just one correction for community development. The downtown arts walk should have been April 23rd, not 22nd. It's a minor.
What's that? Good. Anything else? All in favor of approving these minutes as corrected, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Similarly, you have the March financial report. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion of the financial report?
I just have a question, and it's non-specific to this one in general. When we get these, is there something specific that we should be making sure to look out for?
A lot of that more detailed is discussed at admin.
Just, again, it was a very generic question, so.
Page after page, detailed everything.
Basic overview. I just wanted to make sure.
Notice it doesn't seem to add up. Be sure to call it to our attention. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. This is the time to call for public participation. Kyle, is there anybody online?
We do have one letter, though, that was submitted. Okay. This letter was submitted on April 19th. The subject is the decriminalization of marijuana, and it was submitted by Frank Johnson, resident of 368 Washington Street, Indiana, Pennsylvania. They say, decriminalization is not the answer to a proposed issue of illegality by an individual competent of understanding what is legal and what is not. Rather, more resources and energy should be devoted to research, prevention, and treatment, in which each citizen and institution should take responsibility to combat all substance abuse and addiction. The enforcement of criminal law makes drugs harder to get and more expensive. Sensible use of courts, punishment, and prison can encourage individuals to enter treatment and thus reduce crime. Why not treat an individual arrested for marijuana use in the same way that the courts treat someone arrested for a DUI when no injury occurs? See the arrest as an opportunity opportunity and require the individual to get screened, have any needed treatment, and attend sessions to learn about the dangers of drug use. Addiction is a physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual disease, not a moral failing or an act of self-indulgence, nor is it a racial diversity issue. The color of an individual's skin makes no contradistinction when one effectuates a criminal act knowingly. Children should receive education and prevention support, not encouragement by those they see as educators in our public schools and local government. There should be no room in our education system for those who inveigle our youth with any issue that would proliferate illegal or experimental actions by attempting to ameliorate drug use by using race and discrimination as the mechanism in which to drive the agenda. If an individual in gainful employment of our scholastic system endures, the scholastic governing body should and rightfully dismiss the individual from service of our scholastic environment. What we don't need is legalization or decriminalization, which will make illegal drugs cheaper, easier to obtain, and more acceptable to use. The United States has some 30.8 million adult smokers, 2.5 million teenage smokers, which have actually decreased over the years. Tobacco was not made more available. The age limit was not raised and harder to obtain. If illegal drugs were easier to obtain, this figure would rise with the statistic of marijuana use in our community. Our local law enforcement does not need the unnecessary increase in possible outside obstruction of drug dealers bringing in drugs to our community that could possibly be laced with fentanyl. If there is any instance of a student dying or by taking this substance, if this decriminalization is adopted, the blame, fault, and legal ramifications should be placed solely on the shoulders of the council members who voted to adopt it. The safety of the community and the kids should be paramount, especially to those that sit on this board. Most decriminalization advocates would say they would decriminalize drugs only for adults. History and experience with tobacco and alcohol shows that keeping drugs legal for adults only is impossible. Teenage smoking and drinking were widespread in the United States. Today, marijuana is far more potent than years past. Today, the harmful characteristics of cannabis are no longer different than those of other plant-based drugs such as cocaine and heroin. That's it.
No one else? No need for an executive session? Do we have one? Nope. Then.
We met on Tuesday, April the 27th. Of note was the audit report, and the audit report came back clean and unmodified. This is the report ending for the 2021. It was submitted in December of 2021. So basically, we got a very good, clean, unmodified report, which is good news. So this is from Kim Dorchak from the auditor. That's the main point we were discussing. Regarding March financial reports, it looks really good. If you look at our revenue versus our expenses for March, we actually took in more than we expended. There were two areas where we did expend more, but typically sewage operations, we sometimes go over. And in terms of the project fund, the reason that's more is that's going to get refunded. Everything else, not really anything major. And I think Nicole will address some other issues later on.
Report in your packet.
This is just the summary. If you want the actual audit report, which is a big, with lots of more detail, it's in my office. You can get one.
Summary highlights the report really well.
Any questions? Moving on, community development.
Have the minutes from our April 18th meeting in your packet. Just want to highlight a couple things, and we do have a motion. You got sort of a listing of the public participation that happened. It was primarily about the proposed marijuana penalty change, and that conversation then continued into where this also shows up in our agenda. The second part of public participation were a couple of members of Kappa Sigma attended the meeting because they're in a house that is outside of our designated sort of fraternity sorority area / Greek zone, whatever you want to call it. They would like to move into the Greek area that we've got in our zoning overlay, but there is nowhere for them to move into it essentially. And so basically coming out of this, the committee asked staff to look into what would be involved in expanding or modifying the existing Greek zone for then a future discussion with community development and then possibly bring it onto council, just so that's on everyone's radar. There's no action item at this point, but that's we've asked staff to kind of look into amending that zone.
Are they interested in extending that to 115 South 6th?
No, they basically, they should not be where they are. And they, there's always, we've had several complaints to the borough about them. So they would like to not be where they are. So they would like to move into the zone. And so that's the issue. And so the question is, do we want to expand or modify the existing zone to make more room in it, which would allow for more fraternities and sororities to be within that area?
Are they not able to move into the zone because it's too small? Because they're a new fraternity, or because there's been housing converted away from allowing sororities and fraternities?
I think there's not enough available housing in the zone for them to find a place for themselves. And of course, the push-pull here, right, is that if you expand that zone, you are expanding into existing community. So depending on where you go, you may be rubbing up against folks that bought homes outside of that zone on purpose, right? So this is by no means a simple thing, but I think the first step is to look at kind of what's involved in this. And for the folks that are new, late last year, was that it? We basically approved a variance or an exceptional use, I can't remember which, but that allowed a fraternity to be outside of that zone, but to be a fraternity. And that's the one that's sort of wedged up there against the Hadley Union building. It has the sort of extensive deck that sticks off the second floor of it. And so this, that was a precursor to this problem. This is a follow-on to a similar problem of, more fraternities in their space for.
I guess the reason I asked that question is, are they not in the Greek zone because they are basically driving landlords into not wanting them anymore? And so they have to move somewhere else, and they're going to drive new landlords and not wanting them anymore? Or is it simply a matter of, for example, I'm going to make up numbers because I have no idea. There was 20 and now there's 2 more in the college and they don't have anywhere to go. Which version, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
All I know is that they are interested in, they would like to be in the Greek zone, which would then put them totally within our established zoning. But they cannot find space there. And so their request was, what can we do about that? And so the request from the committee to staff was just look into what would be involved in changing that overlay, essentially. And then, of course, it would have to go, there'd be discussions with all you kind folks, as well as, public participation, because it would be I think we'd have to post it actually, to let the neighbors know what we're considering, just so they can comment. Yeah, no, we try not to, it's actually my recollection, we put up like placards like in the neighborhood, like, so it goes beyond, I believe, just putting in the paper. At least that's my recollection from the last time we had something like this.
And in this particular case, they say they tried to work with neighbors on the noise issue. Do they mean that they were the ones violating and they couldn't stop violating? Or what do you mean they mean they worked with the neighbors? Apparently there was no success, which is what they claim.
Right.
But
when the neighbors call and ask them to turn it down, they do, but then they'll turn it up the next day.
so they're constantly getting complaints.
Yes. So, the
So it's
issue,
not like they're really complying because.
no, right. Like,
They don't want to.
right. I don't know.
Mutually.
I'm not
That's
trying to play this because I'm not a fraternity person. But they present themselves, right, as upstanding members of society, and let's give them credit for the good things they do. And in this case, they would like to come into compliance with our zoning. And I would like us to at least explore helping them do that. And then and again, we'll have more information for you guys in coming months. So I think we can all discuss this in more detail when we have details. Okay. And then a couple things from downtown Indiana. In June, they're going to start working on the flower baskets and the flower beds. and they're looking for volunteers. And so if you would have a green thumb or would like to develop a green thumb, please reach out to DI because they would love volunteers. DI also made a point to thank Paul Gellis and the street crew for moving the flower baskets down, I don't know, 6 inches or a foot on the poles to make them easier to access, which is sounds kind of small, but they're all bolted up there. And we have a lot of poles with a lot of flowers on them. And so it was a really nice thing that Paul and the crew did. And I think it'll help DI be more efficient. So that was good. And then I don't know if it's been announced yet, but there's gonna be a Spring Ladies Day also sponsored by DI later this month. Under Planning Commission, the Historic Architectural Review Board group met and is going to undertake over this summer to inventory the historic architecture within sort of the urban core of the borough. This, if it goes smoothly, will save the borough between $15,000 and $20,000 that would otherwise have to be paid out. So that's good news. And again, we'll be looking for volunteers on that if anyone wants to go out and count old buildings. Should be exciting. I mean that sincerely. And then under code report, we got the report that took in the IE patties period, and it was fairly quiet. This is now in the past, but there was an open house for the active transportation plan this past Tuesday, the 26th, at Grace Methodist. And our staff was also there getting input on the ARP fund use. So that was a nice event if folks had a chance to make it out there. And then under old business, we did talk a little bit about marketing the LERTA, and again, sort of trying to come up with some plans for that. As I understand, the county will hopefully vote on this in May. And so we'll hopefully have all 3 municipalities on, and we can really start to push it out. And then under new business, we had a fairly lengthy discussion with members of the public regarding the proposed sort of ordinance that would change the penalties for small amounts of marijuana and paraphernalia. We also discussed the data that the committee has gathered so far. We're still waiting for additional data. Our hope is that at our next community development meeting, we'll be able to sort of close the data collection phase and move into deliberation. We also discussed the questions that Chief Shaw posed to us in a written document. Many of those hinged on the legal relationship between state law and local ordinances. And so we through Nicole, asked our solicitor Doherty to investigate that and kind of give us an opinion on if we can even enforce this or not. And so that'll be coming, and that'll bear on the discussion. And then Councilor Steelman joined us to discuss the ADA considerations with outdoor dining, and you'll see that that's been incorporated into the motion we'll have here in a second. We did have one action item at the meeting to basically list a borough car on the bid, because that car is being replaced, so we're going to sell the other one. And then before we get to the last motion, we did have a personnel discussion, and Stephanie Dunlap has resigned from the borough to take a job in Ohio, and her resignation is effective the 6th of May, so here imminently, and which is a shame. Actually, we're gonna miss her. She was really good, but Manager Seapost is going to pick up that conversation in her report. And then the last item we have is you have a motion. We have a motion. Motion to approve the 2022 outdoor dining resolution. This does require a second because it didn't come to the committee for approval. So if there's a second for that, I can then give you a little background. So you got that in your packet. The highlights are that this is basically in many ways going back to the 2010 resolution that we had regarding outdoor dining that sort of set up outdoor dining for the borough initially. We changed a number of the requirements of the 2010 resolution sort of on an ad hoc basis for COVID, right, to sort of support local businesses with outdoor dining. So this is kind of going somewhat back to the 2010, but with a number of changes. So let me just run through the changes real quick for you. basically the 2010 resolution had required a physical barrier, like a fence around the outdoor dining. This 2020, or this version we have in front of you does not have that fence, so it makes it a little bit easier to maintain it. We also adjusted the times, and when we had the COVID resolution, we made the times more lenient, a little bit wider, and so we're keeping those more open-ended times. The old resolution, the 2010 resolution, also had a prohibition of outdoor dining during homecoming weekend, and we're just removing that so that outdoor dining is outdoor dining. So there's no weird like homecoming weekend, no outdoor dining. There's the electrical standards and the maintenance for tree safety that were put into the COVID resolution are now embedded in this version under the responsibility of the licensee. The 2010 ordinance had a prohibition against picnic tables and benches, and so that has been removed from this version. So picnic tables and benches are now allowed. Similarly, the 2010 resolution had a requirement for signage on the site to indicate allowable occupancy. That has also now been removed. We added to this version the requirement to maintain a 5-foot walkway, and this is in partial response to the concerns about ADA accessibility within the town. And if they do not maintain a 5-foot walkway, after the third violations, their license for outdoor dining will be revoked. And there's also this basically confirms that and embeds it in there. Yes, sir.
I apologize. Is there a, does it tell them what a walkway entails? Or you may not be, because some aren't there grades and there's.
Sidewalk?
It's the sidewalk.
It's the sidewalk. It's literally the sidewalk.
Sometimes there's, something that's drive overable maybe with a wheel, but doesn't mean it's actually walkway, right? Okay, just double check it.
Yeah.
Question.
On this motion. This is an ordinance, right?
It's a resolution.
Or it's a resolution, excuse me, it's a resolution. That's true, because we had set it up so that it could be amended by resolution. So that does not require a roll call vote. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Yes?
Nope.
Any questions for community development?
I have a question about process, and it can be quick. I've gotten feedback from a number of residents about notices they've gotten from code. One was about somebody had some, construction equipment out on their lawn, and so I got a knock and said, "Hey, are you doing something that you should have a permit for?" And I think he was. And so the question is, what are the things I need to get a permit for? And he went to the website, and it wasn't totally clear. And there's the snow when those sort of come through, there's the mowing when those come through, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later. So I guess I'm wondering, folks seem to have confusion when they receive those, and I'm wondering if we can, I know we do something about Facebook, but they have a hard time finding what the rule is when they go right to the website. And when we kind of do some of these tours for enforcement actions kind of seasonally. So when we do that, I'm wondering if we can add a little thing. Hey, did you get one of these notices? A, it's not a ticket, just need you to fix it. And B, this is important, and here's why we do this.
Yeah, I think the important part to point out is that very rarely does code enforcement give a citation on the first pass, right? So I think that's really to their credit, and that's super important for folks to wrap their minds around that. Like the individual with the construction equipment, that's all. It's all in the borough code, right? It's all, and it is actually laid out. Excuse me one second. But there's it's there. Being able to find it is just tricky. About every other meeting we have discussion of what should be on our website. If we put all those things on our website then becomes essentially as tricky as the borough code. So I think the problem is figuring out where to put stuff so that you, I think it's a good point that we need to have it there. But when code enforcement comes around, they're like, hey, are you doing construction? Yeah, you need a permit for that. Okay, come in. Some of the permits are free, some of them are like 10, 15 bucks. And so they're trying to do education that way. And then the snow thing, everybody knows that if it snows, you should shovel your walk. I mean, that one shouldn't be a shock to folks, I don't think.
I don't know. I think a general thing, G, is just to have the number to call. And, if you have a question, just call. And everybody knows people are open Monday through Friday. So just
But I mean, I
call.
think we could definitely push information out. I don't think that's a
I'm
concern.
just hearing a lot from folks. They're like, hey, I gotta take care of this thing, and we have these abandoned properties next door that I can't get anything done on. And if I don't get this thing done in a week, and I'm gonna get fined.
Well, we're finding the abandoned properties too. I mean, I guess, I understand the person's problem, but I guess.
There's a communication issue.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how to ameliorate it, and maybe we can't. That's fine.
Like if you receive a notice from the borough, call this number, or shoot this email. Right, just give it.
Or the contact number.
You know what I mean? Like information on how to get the answer rather than necessarily every single answer you could think of. Does that make sense? And again, I don't know the specific problem. And I don't know, I haven't gone to the website and looked at this specifically. But does that make sense? Like, here's the page. If you got a notice from code, here's the number for code. Call them and ask them a question.
And I've never gotten one of those citations. I would imagine it would have that phone number on it already.
You know? Post a thing about a reminder that grass is here, and that was prior to code going out, giving any warnings or anything. They were gonna go last week and I said no, so I had Kyle do that post to try to get the information out there to people about.
Get them, code, get them.
I mean, I don't want the code to see that. That's not the point of the code department to go out there and, yeah.
Well, and also for a lot of the maintenance regulations, a couple of years ago, we went from having many things listed in the borough code that was available on the website to saying all of this is referred to the International Property Maintenance format, which if you try to Google it, good luck finding out what you want to know. When I was checking on how tall grass could be in the borough, the only way that I eventually found out, because the chapter in Borough Code that used to cover grass and weed maintenance now is just a blank space. The way to find it out is to look up the information that's supposed to be available to IUP students, where it will tell you that the grass is supposed to be 6 inches tall or shorter. If you're not an IUP student, good luck figuring out that you should pretend to be an IUP student in order to find that out.
It was made to basically to keep our code up to date, essentially. So when the UCC was updated, ours automatically updated to be with it, because we had a bunch of things that then basically there was the building, what you're referring to, the sort of the international building property and property maintenance and building code. And then there was ours, and they were not synced up, which then gave us some liability. So that's why that change was made.
For the record. Yeah, I just actually went through this with a project and I happened to know Brenda, so I called Brenda and asked her a question. Most of them probably are, but not all of them are. Yeah, some specific building railing requirements, things like that are a little different.
It seems to me that things like grass length, the shoveling regulation should be upfront on the web page. More details, yes, I understand the reason, but
Some big ticket items that happen all the time, right? Like snow, grass. Yeah.
mine isn't very much, if there's any at all. but-
To maintain, I'm getting at, most everyone has to deal with snow to some degree. That's what I mean by big ticket. These affect everyone.
Frequently asked questions tab.
Information, I can put anything on any place. I can't create it myself because I am not involved with code or planning.
Okay.
Frequently asked questions that sounds like a great idea.
Easy to do.
Here's a question to give a little bit of guidance. Is the FAQ section specific to code enforcement, or is it like a general FAQ section? Because what I would suggest is if we want an FAQ section that is specific to code, if we could ask the code enforcement to tell Kyle the top 5 or 10 violations that they warn
That's a
people
good
about,
idea.
and then we have FAQs that are just like, where's my trash can have to be? How long can my grass be? How long do I have to shovel? What is considered construction that requires a permit, right? And that can live then on the code enforcement page, I would assume.
One of the other things that happens regularly is theoretically, people are supposed to put their trash out for pickup not more than 24 hours in advance. When you get into 96 hours in advance or 4 or 5 days, there's got to be something wrong there, but it's not obvious looking at the borough's website just exactly how that works.
Notice from the borough, I know. I posted it on my refrigerator when it came in, but it doesn't give you 24 hours. You're not supposed to put it out until before 6:30 the night before it's to be picked up. And in the first ward, that's irrelevant because we don't have any enforcement people over the weekend. In the first ward, the collection day is Monday, so.
Let's not tell everybody.
Keep some of that under our hat. But is that enough? Is that enough of a thing to start with, Kyle?
That's a great plan, and I think that would be, easily done within the next week, assuming staff can give me, code can give me that information to put on there.
Pretty quick. Top 5 fines.
One of the top hitters that we're really interacting with a lot of residents.
Because as soon as we get those taken care of, people are going to complain about something else. But let's do the
At
best we
least it's a
can.
good start.
Thanks, Judy.
Website, especially our website, it seems like every few months somebody has an idea of what to put on the website, and the website is getting really big. It's very jumbled, and you can't put everything on the main page, or the main page is useless. So, simplifying, and maybe even there be a committee in some point in the future where we discuss what is the most important things to communicate, so we can get that out there.
Drive people too. It's either going to be a human being and a phone number, or it's going to be the website. Right.
And having an FAQ is really important, and making sure that we are able to communicate with residents what the most important things are, and also prioritize, because looking at the website, there's a lot of things like community resources too that are just, it's really long,
I'll add it and whatever you're.
Yeah, where's this information?
That works. You're not an IEP student?
Works in the code too. Put in our code stuff. I would say, for all this, our website is we have a really, really good functioning website, and the fact that that's not all of us that are codes online. Like we are very accessible. Documents are much more accessible.
Very well.
By all means.
Anything else for community development?
Please, no, just let go.
An item, because we have our guests here. This was approved in our committee. The motion is to close Walnut Street between Church Street and Gompers Avenue for an outdoor wedding reception on Saturday, June 11th, from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And it's requested by the couple getting married that live at 239 Church Street. And as I said, we approved it. The chief had met with them and asked that they get written approval from the neighbors. They did that. And this is a small little half block between Church and Gompers. So if you have any questions.
That's
Is
the
this a
motion.
from the committee?
Yeah, and we approved it. It is. The chief had to troubleshoot, as he always does, what could go wrong. But I think it's a neat thing. And it's not like we're doing it right off of Wayne or Oakland. This is on a side street in the community.
Block party.
Yeah.
And they close streets for construction all the time. This is for a wedding, okay? I think we can live without driving.
It came up the last time we had a street closed was for a block party that G. Smith and his neighbors helped do over on South
Many
Fifth
years ago,
Street,
though.
a bunch of years ago, where they had all kind of
Many
stuff for
years.
kids.
So
So if you have any questions, we can answer.
We can vote for this.
Okay, we need to vote on it though.
Okay. All in favor of approving this request, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Ooh.
Or if you want.
Congratulations.
Hey, congratulations, you two. See you, Lisa.
Realize Lisa was on Borough Council one time. So she knew who to go and who to ask. But I think I really do. Okay, as you notice, Chief Shaw isn't here. He was selected to attend the FBI National Command Course in Quantico, Virginia. It's only 50 people are chosen. It's highly selective. So there's an application process, nomination process. And it's for chiefs who are with police forces of 50 or less to teach them a lot of the new trends and evidently they're doing something with a Metro field office because it says here, the process to represent a Metro field office across the country. And so I think it's a real big honor that our police chief was selected, one of the few people selected to go to this. And next, in 2 weeks on May 16th, there will be a local police summit that's going to be scheduled here May 16th, hosted by the DA's office, our borough police, and IUP police. Another thing that our police department's going to be doing is they're going to go through an accreditation process through the Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission. They're going to start the process in 2023, and it requires 125 different policies and procedures that need to be completed. And then we will be certified, have a certified police department. And another thing, getting back to our being part of a community-oriented policing, the department is applying for a 2022 community-oriented policing service grant to try to get money to use towards community policing. We did the special events, and then in new business, we had lengthy discussion. We had a 2-hour meeting.
It was my fault.
G. Smith was there, but we had a long discussion regarding anti-racism policies in the community. We started talking about data and statistics. Chief had mentioned an IUP intern is currently breaking down statistics for arrests and citations issued by the police department. I am interested in seeing how our statistics, when we get that information, how they compare to the nation and to the state, and see what areas that our department might need to work on. And it was also suggested under new business that the opioid settlement money might possibly be used to develop a follow-up program in response to overdose calls. The thought is that a follow-up by a police department or a drug and alcohol interventionist might help some of those who initially refused treatment. And this is getting back to last year. We had people in our community come, I think in August, and they were pretty upset. They saw a couple of times our police department issuing Narcan to a victim. And when that victim was resuscitated, they refused treatment, which they have the right to do. And it really bothered them. And so I see this as something worth looking into, because is there a follow-up? And if not, maybe we need to get something where you go back and how are you and just check in. So that's something we're gonna have to discuss. Because a lot of our police is nowadays they're being called to do mental health interventions and drug interventions, stuff that's not normal, wasn't normal part of policing in years past. And we need to see what we can do in our community. And this may involve having to work with the county and the state, but getting funding to deal with this. Sure.
On the arrest and ticketing data, is there any chance that that information comes with where it took place?
I don't know, we probably could.
Address of somebody.
Every citation and every complaint lists the location where it occurred.
Are you seeing, just see if there's a pattern in the borough where these things are happening?
And we don't have to get into everything that's been talked about before, but so okay, just to kind of leave it at that. But yes, to answer your question, is there a geographical trend?
It shouldn't be hard. It's right on the face of the citation or the complaint.
So if they were to get us that information, then it would be, I mean.
A big thing, and like Chief said, having an intern going through all this, we don't want to tie up an officer to do all this paperwork, but now that we're getting back to normal with post-COVID stuff and kids are back, having a student do this type of work is for an internship is good.
I think there's also other resources. There's a lot of data work happening, particularly around anti-racism efforts. So yeah, I'm hoping the chief. I mean, I was glad that he was excited about leading this kind of a thing to look at policy, to consider our data, and to consider what policies might need to be looked at under a variety of lenses. And I think it's probably shouldn't just be all under the departments, because they're policemen. They're not and men and women, they're not necessarily data. And there's really good partnerships around. There's lots of folks here in town who are looking at police data and can probably give us a big hand. So I encourage them to reach out to some of those partners.
Yeah, we're very lucky. Our Justin Shaw's very open to this, and it sets the tone for our department. That's it for public safety.
Are there any questions for public safety?
Did you want to talk about the Gompers thing? You weren't at your last bullet. That's all. Sorry, I interrupted and derailed a little bit there, just in case there was more.
Follower.
Second to last one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if this was, it was mentioned that the mayor had requested a feasibility study at South Fifth Street in Gompers. He requested a feasibility study, I don't know the results of it, to assess whether Gompers could be converted to two-way west of South Fifth Street to the Duncan entrance. It's Gompers at that point, up east of South Fifth Street, Gompers is two ways. And what the idea is, look to see if they brought it up, how many feet. But I don't know the results of the feasibility study, so. Do you know that?
Yeah. No, where were they?
You got results.
I have the results. The lieutenant went out and looked over the whole area and looked at what the project itself would be removing. And there are two older buildings at the end of that property that were going to be removed. And there's a sidewalk right next to it that would also be removed. And once that was done, Gompers would be wide enough to go two-way from South Fifth Street to Taylor Avenue. Okay. So then that way you could go to Taylor Avenue, turn left, and then get on Church Street to go, if you wanted to go west at that point in time. So it gives the project the opportunity to go both ways.
Good, thank you.
Yes, up to Taylor, that's correct.
Where Gompers hits Fifth, you've got to have a car that's set up above the street a little bit, or you're going to bottom out.
You gotta slow down.
Slow down. Yeah, you got to. It's a speed bump, basically.
Slow down, speedster. You should
I
be
drive
going
it all
slow.
the
There's a
time, so.
business there. There's
Oh, that
kids
would,
walking
that would
around.
be cool.
I don't bottom out, but
Right.
I go very slow going down there and I wouldn't.
I would recommend
Going the
everybody
other
goes
way
really slow.
might be
You should be going slow there.
Feel that bad? Just being real. They should slow down if it's a road hazard.
Have the clearance that your truck has.
It's out my driveway.
Anyway, I did let the developers know about that, so they can understand. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And it's just kind of driving me crazy.
Oh.
You think more people need them? I can get more. All right, well.
Just for my committee.
Then Public Works. And the vice president, please.
Well, she's all in charge because I was not able to make the meeting, so. you go, man.
Bid opening for the paving contract. So long as everything checked out with the engineer, we accepted Dairy Construction's low bid. Later in here, you'll see, let's jump over, that we had also approved a doubling of our budget using the additional liquid fuels. You have to spend 80% of your liquid fuels every year, and we just have carryover from those past years, and we've decided to utilize some of that carryover to expand our paving for this year. Nicole, were you able to talk to the engineers about whether we're expanding on that contract or we have to? Okay. All right, so we'll be rebidding a new contract, talking about, I think, paving either Shryock or Nixon.
Answer the question. I apologize. I don't know if this is out of order. Excuse me, out of the order of the meeting. I'm not going to say something inflammatory, I promise. Not this time. So the ordinance, it's not an ordinance, the rule where they have to pay from pave when they,
That's
sorry. The mic was clapping for me. So they're supposed to, when they do construction, they're supposed to pay from the center line to the edge, correct?
Yeah.
Great. When you drive from Chestnut to 12th, I mean, it's bad. And I know they just finished that project not that long ago, so I don't know if more was to come.
Season.
Well, no, they paved the whole strip, but they cut up a strip. It's like a reverse speed bump the whole way down that road. And so my question is, in the spirit of that rule, does that satisfy that rule? Or is there more to come for that project in general? So that's why it's not made nice yet, because it's not done yet.
Out to see what what contractor did the work, if they're planning on coming back and fixing it.
Shadco are the people there, I believe, but and again, maybe they're not done yet. Maybe there's more to go on. I'm not sure about any of those details, but they did pave the whole way across. And I'm just wondering if that satisfies the spirit of that, because it's real bad.
I know when we talked about that in the committee meeting, there was some discussion that there were projects that we are still expecting the utility companies, because they did the work late in the season, to come back
Right.
and make it
And that might be
right
also in this
now.
case, but I'm just,
But
I
I
was just
don't know
curious.
which, we
if
weren't
that
sure
was-
which ones we could count on.
The new word.
Or if that was their paving job.
That specific example was Chestnut from 9th, at least from 9th to 12th. More on the other side, I'm not sure. And again, that's just an example. I'm not sure if that was even meant to be a final product. I don't know, but it's pretty gnarly to drive down that road.
All right, we did interviews for the team lead position for the Parks Department, and an offer of employment was made. Was it accepted, or are we past that point? Great.
May 16th, as long as everything seems to be coming back good, all the paperwork.
Individual will then work with Paul to hire the second in that department. because they're going to be working together as a team. So that we're moving in that good direction. We purchased a skid steer, or we have voted to purchase a skid steer. Limb collection is probably over at this point.
Yeah.
Continuing. Please call if you see a pothole that you need to get resolved. We have hot patch now, so that can be more permanently fixed. April 7th was IRMC Day at IUP. There was a half-day conference that featured some research projects, and the Indiana Borough was featured in that with our COVID wastewater surveillance program. We had a number of issues at the wastewater treatment plant, including a very large issue where if you look down about 3/4 of the way, on 411, there was a bolt that sheared off, and that resulted in sludge filling up. They had to break off the power and siphon it, get in there and siphon it out. It was a multi-day event. Yeah. So those guys were, there was no issues as far as our testing was concerned. So we made it out with flying colors, but this is the issues when you have a very old wastewater treatment plant that is always needing really expensive repairs. So more to come on that, I'm sure. The storm drains continue to be cleaned. Signs continue to be replaced. They'll be painting, yellow painting and stop blocks. They probably have already done that. The baskets were already lowered. They repaired a stormwater pipe on 11th Street over by the railroad tracks. They were out there for a number of days. It had collapsed. Had a bit of an accident at the police department and the doors, and those are having to be replaced. There was a sensor and it hit the top of a patrol car. So, but the doors are old enough that the part is not refundable. So we have new doors coming. I think it's an issue with people coming in and out. Yeah. All right, the Nixon Avenue roadway improvements, that has been submitted to the DEP. For those who aren't aware, that is the swamp that is in First Ward that has been slowly creeping in on folks' properties and becoming quite a hazard. Now, because it's a wetland, we weren't really able to do too much to it. However, it is also a road. And it's actually paving the road, and so that's being submitted to DEP for approval. So
Road through that? Oh, gosh. Where's it gonna go?
With the rest of Nixon Avenue.
it's just not connected. Right now, it's a paper alley that has been slowly filled with the other side. So there's a road on the other side. Should connect. So, yeah.
It goes by the health department building there.
Those houses back there. They're submitted the letter to DEP to skip the final phase and go to 537. So that's been submitted, just our draft letter. The 7th Street Stormwater Project is finishing up with completing their storm work or the curb work, and the architects are working on cost estimates for this building, updating what we did in 2016 because a number of other things have happened. I've already talked about the expansion of the paving, which is great. And there's a number of, listed here, a number of old items that we have sold or have bid out on, made a good deal of money on some old skid steers. COVID update, we continue to do surveillance. The numbers have gone up and down since this meeting, not significantly, just up and down. That's about it. Does anyone have any questions for Public Works?
Persons? Don, you talked about shade tree?
Shade Tree Commission met on the 25th of April. Big thing that was discussed is the fact that hasn't been a raise in funds for the Shade Tree Commission in a long time. And Bob Cruzan emphasized there's more work to be done than funds to do it. If trees aren't not properly maintained or consistently maintained, we're basically throwing money away. He asked all the people on Shade Tree Commission to contact your counselor and start the process as budgets are being figured out for next year.
Did you bring up, and maybe you can just bring up for him at the next Shade Tree Commission, that our intention for the Parks Department is that those folks are going to work hand in hand with the Shade Tree
Paul
Commission
Gellis was at the
and
meeting.
do a lot of that work. So I think that his requests over the many months have not gone on deaf ears.
Right, I know.
We have in fact budgeted a chunk
Paul Gellis
of
was
money, much more than he's seeking here. So
Paul was at the meeting and talked about
I just
that.
want to make sure he recognizes that and connects when we hire these folks and works hand in hand and does the work, because he's totally right. We all agree. And we heard him and we created a department for him. So
The scope of my understanding of what their purview will be from the ground, right? What they can reach from the ground. Tree work is extremely expensive. Even with that, the work that the trees need to be maintained, it's far above that, honestly. I mean, sure, credit where credit is due, absolutely. But to his point, what?
No, I mean, this is the stuff we're taking,
But that's his point, is to maintain the overheads, keep them out of wires, replace trees as needed. I mean, isn't the budget like $17,000?
Something like that. It's low.
That's not a very big tree job. Not really in the scope of how many trees are in this community. That's all I'm trying to say.
Starting May 1st, they're starting a tree inventory of the borough. What else? On Philadelphia Street, 4 trees on South 6 will be replaced by the Borough Shade Tree Commission with Armstrong Gold Maples. This is over by First Commonwealth Bank. They're working with them to replace 4 of the trees. 6 trees will be replaced by the Borough Shade Tree Commission on Philly. So that's a thing with First Commonwealth and the Shade Tree Commission. Let's see, they've issued 29 complaints since January 29th, all but 3 have been resolved. And if you noticed on Arbor Day, there was a picture in the paper, they planted a tree, a heritage gold linden tree, which is a good for pollinators. It was planted in honor of Dave Fairman and the work he did with the Tree Commission. And that was over off of North 3rd Street and Water. 5th and Water, sorry, 5th and Water. Right. Yeah, I know.
Digging the hole. Thank you. Bob helped, and so did Brad. Brad, I forget his last name, but so was not alone in digging the hole.
We didn't discuss anything about the ordinances and all, but there was a lot of discussion on all this other stuff. And as I said, Paul Gellis was there, which was really nice because then some questions could be answered and dealt with.
We also did a proclamation on that same day because it was Arbor Day.
Yeah.
And we had a flyover for Dave Fairman.
Yeah.
I thought that was very nice. He liked that. Perfect timing.
That's all I have to report.
Are there any questions for the Shade Tree Commission?
I would point out that the tree inventory is supposed to start yesterday, right?
Okay, Nicole.
Session will present the ARP information for discussion. We did have our set up for public input at the Active Transportation Open House on April 26th. We did get some feedback from the public on that. Some of the council members that were there kind of saw a sneak peek of the presentation, but and then moving forward, the stamp program, HRG is our consultant firm that we've been working with for the last few months on that. The DCE grant that we got rewarded back in August of 2021. They're going to present their report probably on the June 21st work session. So I know we kind of had June or July stuff for that, but I'm going to push the POC for the reapportionment probably back till July, if that's okay, because the stamp program wants to get in here and present their report. Again, that was through the grant we received through DCED. And then a big announcement, Brenda Dar, the Code Department Administrative Assistant, was promoted to the Code Zoning Department Supervisor / Building Code Official. With the departure of Stephanie Dunlap, this will ensure that the Code / Zoning Department will continue to operate without any issues. Brenda has all the knowledge and knows the operation of the department, and I'm very grateful that she accepted the promotion. So it will be able to, our code department and zoning will be able to run without any. She and Stephanie was very supportive of talking Brenda into taking the position. I will continue to work with community development for hiring a planner / economic development employee, which is laid out in our ARP plan. So that will be more in detail coming up out of planning, out of the community development plus part of our ARP plan. So that economic development person's in there, so / planner. So, but it's a good thing. How this will work is now Brenda, with the promotion coming out of, she'll have 6 months to actually accept the position, because she has 6 months if she would like to go back to her previous position. So then we'll fill her position, the assistant here, down the road. Okay, but as far as the code department, I have it's gonna run just fine. She's been running it, she's been running it, so.
You'd hire a planner? The planning?
Yeah, so that's, because we have our zoning, Greg does our zoning, and our code's kind of taking, in Brenda, our codes department is taking care of. We just need that economic / planner vision person. So, which I'm going to work with, Ben knows, we talked about it for bring it up in community development and kind of move forward with that.
Good.
And that's all I have.
Manager.
I've been working with the manager on some property issues that we've been dealing with. We will have our response to the Duncan Heartland Restaurant Group that will be filed either tomorrow or Thursday. And I've been in communication with the county solicitor on the LERTA ordinance. They have to, my understanding is they're going to vote to advertise it at their next meeting and then hopefully pass it at their subsequent meeting. So that's moving right along in collaboration. But with that, that's really all I have at this point.
Any questions for the solicitor? No. This is
she wasn't
part that you found at your place.
Sorry, she gives her, she's not feeling well, which I said, that's fine, stay away. She did give me this report, which I just printed it out to give to everyone. Obviously, the big ticket item is IUP's graduation is this Friday, but if you want to go through her report, this is what she was going to report for the month. It's Friday and Saturday. Undergrad is Friday. Yeah.
Undergrad Saturday.
Mhm.
That seems absurd. We're not a
Miracles of Facebook. I know that today is Jonathan Warnock's birthday, so happy birthday.
Good job, me.
Another year.
A regional forum held in Cranberry by the Pennsylvania Municipal League with a focus on envisioning. I'm not quite sure what we envisioned. Most of the discussion was about the same kinds of things we discuss here when talking about what to do with the ARP funds. It was, however, a good chance to network with other municipalities in the region. Last week, the Accreditation Advisory Committee and the Indiana Borough Bicycle Pedestrian Committee hosted a public meeting on the future of active transportation, i.e. muscle-powered transportation plus public transportation. Indiana Borough and County. We also had a table at the meeting for people to express their views on how to spend the ARP money. There were more people in attendance than I had feared, but maybe not quite as many as I'd hoped. In any case, we did get some valuable feedback from the public, which will be referred to in our discussion of the ARP and so forth. Thursday of this week is the monthly Stormwater Education Project meeting. Borough, et cetera, on stormwater, and that's what I have.
Flower beds and everything. And I just wanted to remind downtown Indiana that the fire department is always available, unless we have a fire, to provide water when they get down to that end, because that's just about when they're running out, and we like to fill them back up. So when they're going back up Philadelphia Street, so it just kind of helps them out. And I think getting it lower will help them with the watering, I'm sure.
You now have that golf cart, right, that they put a tank on. And then...
We talked about the fact that we had Gompers Avenue surveyed, and we know where we stand there. I've mentioned some other things to Heartland, and you know, it's just like throwing out different things and saying, hey, here's another opportunity, here's a chance, what do you think? And I know that the lawsuit's still going on, but at least we tried.
Come before us. We have two items under new business. First one, the one that's on your agenda, Reapportionment Ad Hoc Committee. Were we going to appoint such a committee? Where did this come from?
It comes from me. It comes from me. Yeah, I met with Nicole and some staff members, I think it was last week. It's all a blur. To go over like what the process is going to be, making maps, and do we have the capacity? And it seems like there's some steps that need to be taken to get that data put into our maps. But they also need kind of counsel from us about what these maps are going to look like, how many different wards. This is kind of an involved process, and rather than making them draw the lines and then we sit here and say, no, why don't we move it down the street, to have a number of us that can meet with them a few times prior to the July work session to come up with proposals and pros and cons, and also talk to some other college towns, small college towns, and see what they do, what works, what doesn't work. So that was my thought, was to put together a committee of council members to work with staff to come up with that. Ideally, council members that could be available during the day to meet with staff during their office hours a few times. So.
I assume that, as with other committees, the way the code sets it up, you want me to appoint a committee, right? But I'm going to do that by asking for volunteers.
I mean, what time are we talking? Like when throughout the day, how often?
A handful, like a few times, like
Volunteer.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'd love to volunteer, but I don't get off work till 3. So, yeah.
otherwise, let's not do 12. Okay, guys, please.
Like you volunteered there.
I would love to have the chair of admin on it since it's actually going to go through admin. So at least if Poom, if you're available, that would be great.
We were talking like
Oh, yeah, I've already.
a meeting, I don't know, like in the mornings, it seemed to work.
Committee, just to pull some of that job from staff and be able to kind of work with it. And they can provide us how to get the data and we can move it around to make some wards and see what works for everybody.
As far as specific streets, that I don't know. But if you look at basic population breakdown, it is fairly easy. You have 4 wards, 4 and 1 become 1, and you split 2 and 3 into 3. And the population breakdown was within 200 per ward. Based on the numbers, if these are roughly accurate.
But it will come down to like streets and houses. So that's what,
Very doable to maintain 4 wards and move the lines.
that's the will.
Committee?
I did volunteer.
And I will work with the committee.
I'm taking
It all
away,
depends on when it is.
I'm
'cause I am-
taking away my own nomination because in the mornings I'm not available. So I love data.
Yeah.
So
with
if you wanna
enough
send me
warning, I mean,
data, I
I'm
love it.
randomly flexible. So it all depends on when it is, whether or not. Right, but if it's every morning from 9 to 10 for the next 30 days, then no, I'm not available. Right. Yeah, if it's 2 or 3 meetings randomly spaced throughout the next 30 to 60 days, yes, I could do that.
I mean, it's just going to be working, going through this, looking at every street. I know there's a couple numbers that want to see multiple versions, and that's a lot of work on staff, so. Are those public meetings? Public meetings? You guys all come, what's the point? So please, for the love of God. I would like 3 to 4 would be workable, so. Well.
3.
4.
Yes, sir. Would be.
But does Sarah want
6 names.
She does do a lot.
So it's back to council. It's a working group. It's not a philosophical group. It's literally like calling people, seeing what other council members at other municipalities, how they run things, looking at structures of how the little governments work in other places, which I've already started a spreadsheet of all the universities, towns. So we have the data. I just need to talk to them and see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, so that's perfect. Like, that's when we thought, like, we could break down tasks, like, okay, Luke, you're on here, you're contacting this municipality, and this municipality, and having them answer a set of questions that we're gonna give you.
I don't know why I wouldn't be able to at least participate. Again, it depends on when it is. There's days I can't. Randomly, sometimes it is random that I can't, but I am fairly flexible with enough notice.
You've been assigned.
And okay, move the lines here, move the lines there. We'd like to do like research and ask all these other municipalities about it.
Meaning 4 wards is only one of the options.
To have multiple options, including at large, and 3, 4, some municipalities have 6. So
Of the scenarios pros, either hybrid or maintaining wards as they are, moving around. A lot of it involves the moving ward lines. So it sounds like,
them all, majority of you.
don't worry. The point is, even with a hybrid model, you still need to move ward lines, right?
This is, yeah.
So for 2 of the 3 scenarios, you need to redraw the ward lines.
Okay, but this is discussion that could go into the meeting, so.
Committee then.
About, I have Casey, Luke, Sarah, Josh, and me. Now, Sarah was nominated. Did you agree to do it? No, that's 6. Drop out.
Like, this is coming to council at the July work session, whatever we come up with, they'll come here and then we'll discuss it. but we just need to come up with a couple suggestions.
Recommendations from this committee.
These are non-binding recommendations.
We just need help reaching out to the other places and getting them the information, getting the information.
Okay, so that's Boom, Casey, Luke, me, and Sarah.
Sarah, did you want to be on this?
I'm okay with it. It's something that I've been interested in anytime the last 30 years, although primarily at the Commonwealth level.
That would be a yes.
So this is a yes, no question.
We'll have an agenda, stick to the agenda. Like, these are the tasks, and then we'll move on.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thanks, guys.
I appreciate the work on it. It is a lot of work, and I wouldn't underestimate the task. You are essentially determining what will be the representation of citizens of Indiana Borough for the next 30 to 40 years.
We are not determined. Council is going to determine that.
You're making this decision, and you're making these recommendations. This is what the decision is, and so there's a lot of work involved. And I would recommend that you take it very seriously and not try to skip and try to take shortcuts.
All right, we have one other item, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Steelman, who wanted to bring this up. I'll print out.
Okay. In February of last year, 2021, the council adopted a climate action plan. And if you look at page 26 of the climate action plan, which I'm not absolutely sure anybody did before we voted on it, we've got a line about encouraging less mowing. And there are a number of ecological reasons for that. And so when this no mow May idea began to show up in various native plant web pages and so on that I am acquainted with, I got interested in it. And basically, it's a really simple idea that instead of rigorously enforcing our local ordinance about mowing grass to 6 inches or less, we just let things go for the month of May. If people want to mow their lawns, they can do that. If they want to not mow their lawns, they can do that. The advantages are particularly early in May is a time that a lot of beneficial insects are coming out and starting to make themselves useful, and they're hungry. And the more dandelions and violets and other flowers that are available for them, the better off they are. And for all of us who like food, cherishing our pollinators is probably a really good idea because they're responsible for a lot of our food. We get a lot of other ecosystem benefits from insects that I won't go into, but there's a real advantage to making things as easy as possible for pollinating insects in particular during the month of May. There's also the advantage that really American lawns are an energy sink and a water sink and don't provide a whole lot in the way of ecological benefits. For one thing, if you replace a turf lawn with natural plantings, you tend to be able to have a surface that will absorb a lot more rainwater. And absorbing rainwater is something that we're extremely interested in. Not mowing the lawn for a month isn't going to have a whole lot of effect on that. But if people have a little time to sit back and think about not mowing a lawn is actually kind of fun. Maybe I can replace this lawn with something that will have more general benefits and while we're at it, could conceivably be even prettier than the lawns that we've been raised to think are good, but aren't generally actually that interesting. But the main reason okay, so people will save energy. Their gas-powered machines will save energy.
Propose this for this May or next year or?
I don't even know if we need a formal vote on it, but if we could have a consensus to suggest to the code department that they just relax.
A vote, I think. If you wanted to, because of the suspension of enforcement of.
May, so to try to enforce it in May is.
What does it require?
Enough in May that it would still have an effect.
Like what?
Code, it's part.
In the borough code that you have to have your lawn 6 inches.
But it's similar to like what we just got done with the street dining, right? Where during COVID, we passed something that temporarily rescinded it. Is there a way to temporarily not rescind, but
Dining thing's a resolution.
what is the legal mechanism?
I think the ordinance states that it can be that the dining one can be modified by resolution. That's right in the ordinance.
So before we move to do anything, I actually very much disagree with this on many, many levels. Financially speaking, you could put businesses out of business by not mowing grass for a month. Small start. I started by mowing grass. And if you took away my clients for a month, I'm out of business.
But if they want to mow.
Yes, and if they wanted to pay for lawn mowing, or if they didn't, then all of a sudden my client base is gone for a month. Not mine specifically, but there's a lot of startups, myself as a startup, that the 10 or 12 lawns, if they'd opted into not mowing their grass for a month, I would have been out of business and working at McDonald's. Not that there's anything wrong with working at McDonald's, but that's not where I wanted to work. I wanted to start and grow a business. It would have put me under. This right here for 1 month, all of my clients would have put me out of business.
I know when you first started speaking, you said that it wouldn't be a requirement to have anybody
But the
mow or
guy
not mow.
who's
Is that
being-
right,
the-
though?
The guy being paid.
That's what I thought you said at first.
The guy being paid,
I was just asking her.
the guy being paid isn't the one making the decision. The guy in business is not the one making the call. His clients are. And a lot of people in the borough, if they don't have to mow their grass, wouldn't mow their grass, and that's totally fine. But there are large businesses built around this that you are at the drop of a hat proposing you take away a month of their revenue, up to a month of their revenue. And that is damning for a business.
We tell our code department not to.
Or you give
enforce
them the option to cite them or not to cite them.
No,
Well,
we
isn't that the
can't.
way it
It's an
goes?
ordinance. It's.
I know, that was sarcastic.
That's no different than asking our police not to enforce something.
I can go on with reasons against this, but I don't know if it's necessary.
I just want to know like how we would do it. Is it even possible for us to do
is the
it
question.
for this month?
For the month
Or
of
are we
May.
talking about, because I mean, I think we should have a conversation about whether we want to do it or not, because, you know, the environment versus protection for businesses, that's a discussion, I'm sure. But I guess what I'd like to know is if it's even possible at this stage for us to do it in a legal way, yes.
For this month.
Is to take pride in their property and the appearance. And if your neighbor gets away with it and it looks trashy, beautiful, but trashy. There's reasons why people live in the borough and there's reasons why people choose not to live in the borough. So, I mean, there are people that can't afford it. They might get away with it, might make them happy, might make the bees happy. And I love your love of this and I appreciate it.
I would think we would probably need to amend the ordinance to provide for that mechanism to have codes, you know, suspend that for the month. And probably turn it around for this year. But certainly in the future, I think it's something that you could consider if the board wants to. But I think to ask your code enforcement office right now, you know, saying, hey, let's get grass cut, let's get,
Code enforces the like tree lawn in front yard, right? Not the backyard.
There too.
Yard to check it, but yeah.
from the street.
But immediately, does it go to Public Works or does it come to community development?
I was actually gonna suggest community development. Yeah. Supposed to go to.
We've taken lawn issues before, consider them. Yeah, the thing that I worry about is sightlines, you know, aside from these issues, but sightlines, that's actually a safety thing. But something I worry about a lot, but.
There's actually long-term damaging psychological effects to communities. I know I mentioned it before, but I actually looked up. There's a study from the University of Chicago that actually says that people that don't have maintained areas can suffer depression, sexual, basically they can't perform in bed anymore. There's a lot of reasons why you should mow your grass. I'm not even making it up, okay? And that's on top of the crippling economic. There's at least 25 companies in this town that mow grass.
All right, I move to table it to G's committee.
Or not, just give it to G's committee.
Proposal.
It was just a discussion.
Yeah, it's for further discussion.
What is relevant is that we are on the books on having a line in here that encourages residents to mow less. So that's on our books, so.
Need mowing, that is an option too.
There's lots of really good advice out there, so, you know, if it's.
People actually plant grass.
Care plug for men?
That's not itself
Grow anywhere.
out there. Some of it's grass.
I think when you refer to our code department going out there and we cite very little for grass. We give them warnings and say, hey, cut your grass. If you would look at the actual fees or the fines that we send, it's very minimal. Like
Warnings and the actual citation, the warning.
Well, it feels the same.
cut your grass, you know.
You get just as mad.
Last year's May minutes, it indicated that there were 29, were they citations or warnings for grass? Because there was grass 1 and then there was 1 grass 2. So that's the difference between warning and an actual citation. Okay.
Yeah, because there was, you know, we let it go a week and then there was warnings given this week, but.
Imagine if we were to pass this for next May, there'd be no warnings during the month of May either. I mean, that would be my assumption that assumption, Sarah.
First, you better have your mower out there.
Maybe one thing we can look at over time is just reconsidering the 6-inch limit and whether we want to, as you said, encourage people just to mow a little less generally.
I'd actually agree with that one. I think 6 inches is extremely low, especially the month of May. You get 6 inches in my backyard in 3 days.
Because of the rain? Yeah.
So that part I actually agree with.
Well, it's very, I mean, it's probably like, no, and it's probably more like 10 inches or above. Like it's never, you're never gonna have anybody get a warning for 6 inches.
My poor little mower won't handle 6 inches.
Watching this folio, I think he's ready.
We're like a little bit of conclusion on this, if I'm being honest.
I think there's.
Another thing to mentioning there.
Anything here? I mean,
8:30. Is there anything else?
Is there any other new business that needs to come before us?
I would like, what is happening with this?
It's going to.
Public Works, and we'll put it on new business and, include this, not just the no mow May, this is a particular thing, but include the broader picture of how are we communicating to our residents, what's in our climate action plan that we passed, including this and maybe other things.
There also needs to be an economic point of view taken on this. It is massive amounts of revenue for many, many businesses in this community. And if it is taken away,
And so maybe if we get them a month in advance or 2 months in advance or 6 months in advance, knowing that, hey, a lot of people in the borough are going to not mow in May. And they're going to need a lot of mowing and it's going to be really hard. So you can plan in advance. I hear you. I take your point. I take your point. I hadn't thought of it. I take your point. I think it's important.
So we're not doing.
Not doing it now. Nothing now.
To encourage people not to mow. Oh, yeah, they still got to mow.
on me, honestly, I'm really not.
Why? Yes.
It does seem a little strange to send this to the committee, not with the person that professionally mows grass. Just
Well, you
saying.
can always attend the meeting.
And so you mean the meetings we're supposed to have less of and we're not supposed to go to all of them?
Go to 'em. You're welcome to go to them.
Yes, I know, but it would be another meeting that we have to go to instead of the one we're at.
Want to do this anymore? You don't have to.
I move to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Please.